The United States is preparing to make one of its biggest diplomatic trims in decades. They're closing down 27 missions, including 6 embassies on African soil, as Washington eyes a 20% cut to the State Department's operation budget. Questions are being raised about the implications for global diplomacy and especially for Africa. This a retreat from engagement or just a fiscal pragmatism, if we can call it that? We speak now to Professor Christopher Isike, a leading expert in African politics and international relations at the University of Pretoria. Prof, always a pleasure having you on Salam Media. Thank you so much for joining us. First, before we get to the conversation, there are two things that I'm getting here, right? Two key words, and that I would like you to explain for us. Number one, the difference between a mission and an embassy, and number two, just your reaction to this announcement by the United States of America. Is it really, some kind of fiscal budget cut, as they claim it is, or are we seeing a retreat from Africa particularly?
Good morning, Salo, and thank you for having me. Also, good morning to your listeners. It's not really a retreat per se. We know that since Trump got in, there has been a retreat from multilateralism. He's been pulling out the U.S. He's used the excuse of what the U.S. is getting in terms of the amount of money that goes into a lot of these missions and what they do abroad. So in this particular case, there would be the idea behind the Doge cutting down staff, and activities of different departments is to ensure efficiency at reduced costs. So the State Department in the U.S. is being penciled to down for cuts of up to 50%, of its budget. And I think that this closing down of embassies and missions is one of the ways that the U.S. intends to do that.
And we're seeing planned closures, including some right here in Africa. You have the Central African Republic, you have Eritrea, Gambia, Lesotho, the Republic of Congo, and South Sudan. How significant are these missions in terms of U.S.-Africa relations, and what should be the response from these countries?
All right, let me first go back to your question on the difference between an embassy and a mission. So an embassy is the official, diplomatic representation of one country in the capital of another country, and it's usually headed by an ambassador, who is the highest ranking diplomat and official representative of the sending state. So it is usually located in the capital city, like I said, represents the head of state and government of the sending country. The ambassador handles political, economic, consular, and cultural relations, and has full diplomatic status under the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. Right. A mission, on the other hand, is a broader term that refers to any official diplomatic delegation or representation of a sending state to a host state, right? It can include embassies, but also encompasses other forms of representation, such as special missions, the envoys, like South Africa is sending an envoy to the US, and they can also include delegations to international organizations. So that's the main difference between them. The mission is more fluid and can be embodied in an individual. Now, to your second question on the wider implications of all of these, I have noted that there are a few African countries that are in the list of consulates that will close. For example, we know that they want to close embassies in Lesotho, in the Republic of Congo, and then Central African Republic and South Sudan. And then in terms of missions, they're closing the one in Durban. There are two consulates in South Africa. It's one in Durban and one in Johannesburg. I understand that the one in Durban is being listed for closure. Now, what do these these mean? They could mean fiscal responsibility, like pragmatism, like you said, but they also have implications in terms of ease of assessing the U.S. consular services. So, if, for instance, the U.S. was to completely take out the consulate in Johannesburg, it would mean that anyone who wants to travel from South Africa to the US will go to a regional outpost, because that's one of the things I hear they want to do, to concentrate some of these things around specific locations to serve as regional, outposts, right? But it would make sense that in Southern Africa, for example, the regional outpost should be in South Africa because of the facilities it has and the proximity to centrality to the region. But I won't be surprised if, out of spite, given the tense relations between South Africa and the US, they eventually prefer to take it to, say, Zambia.
I was about to say that we
Yeah,
don't know for how long that might be in place. So.
Yes. Remember, one of there was an ambassador hopeful who had threatened that they would close down the one in Johannesburg if they changed the name of the street, which the city council of Joburg was trying to do. So we don't know what will happen with that. It could still go elsewhere, just out of spite to South Africa. But again, all of this will also harm the relations between South Africa and the US even more, and they have implications for diplomatic relations, especially people-to-people relations, because there are a lot of Americans in South Africa who would prefer to use such consular services in South Africa than begin to travel to smaller countries around to access those services.
No, definitely. What I'm gathering from you as you're speaking is maybe we shouldn't be reading as much, on this as we should. Maybe it's just that. Maybe they're just trying to cut down costs. But we've seen the way the United States, especially this administration, the attitude that it has had on Africa, particularly South Africa, obviously a key standout, and there's always been concerns about China filling the diplomatic vacuum that the United States of America is seemingly no longer interested in on the continent. Do you think this move will also give Beijing a bit more room to assert itself on the continent?
Absolutely. With these close downs, Beijing is going to be ahead of the US in terms of presence in Europe and in Africa. Okay, and that has implication, considering that China is the US challenger for world leadership, even though the Chinese are really not keen on taking that role from the US. They would prefer to be a world leader, but not the world leader, right? But now the US is giving up these positions because Trump does not understand that these things are beyond just money that the US spends. They are also about its leadership, its power, its influence in these regions, and then the services that they offer. That presence is very calming to those who look up to the US for world leadership. And then through USAID, for example, the soft power profiling that these embassies help the US to project in these regions. So yes, it will now become second to China in at least from these courts, these 10 embassies and 17 consulates. If they go ahead with that plan, because this is just something that was leaked out, if they do go ahead with that, they will now be running behind China in at least Africa and Europe.
And just lastly, before I let you go, Prof, we had the big news that KBC Jonah's former finance minister has been appointed by President Cyril Ramaphosa to be part of that special envoy to America to try and mend these almost severed diplomatic ties between us and Washington. What do you make of that? Right person, right time, and what should be his key priorities if the United States of America does give him an ear, because we don't even know that they might, allow him a chair at the table.
And maybe this is the reason why the president chose to do it at this time. My first inclination, if I was the president, would be not to make the first move in sending anyone to DC. The US did make the first move by indicating their interest to appoint Bozell to become the US ambassador to South Africa. So that's the first move. I would have waited and see what the US does, so that we can use that opportunity to negotiate an ambassadorial position from South Africa to the US. So my thinking is that President Ramaphosa is doing it now because he wants to use the opportunity of negotiating the acceptance of Bozell to also put forward someone that has to be accepted. Remember, South Africa has to accept the US nominee for that person to come. So it could be an opportunity to say, okay, look, we will accept this person on the condition that you also accept an envoy, not an ambassador right now. And this is going to be this person. If there's agreement on both sides, then the Pretoria can also say, well, we, now that you've accepted this person, we hope that you will at least speak to this person. Marco Rubio will then have to engage with that person. What I think will eventually happen is to turn Mr. Jonas into the ambassador. He would eventually upgrade to become the ambassador. But I think South Africa is trying to say, no, let's first of all send someone that is acceptable. He negotiates on our behalf. He's a businessman himself, steeped in ANC and politics, understands the country very well. He's an astute negotiator and knows his onions. So he's going to get into that job and do a good job of it. And I think that if he does have access and things are going well, he would eventually be upgraded to become the ambassador. If that's what President Ramaphosa is doing, then it's a smart move.
No, definitely. Prof, we're going to leave it there for now. Always a pleasure chatting to you. Really, really appreciate you giving us the time. Hope to chat again.
Thank you.
There you go, Professor Christopher Isike. And yeah, it's going to be interesting how this pans out. That leak, I think it was yesterday, that we found out that the US plans to close around 27 missions worldwide, and some of them right here on African soil. You have Central African Republic, Eritrea, Gambia, Lesotho, the Republic of Congo, and South Sudan. And it will be important to see how significant these missions are. If this will see China, saying America is not interested on the continent. This is where we'll fill in the space. We know that is something that has been happening. We know that there's been concerns from those that believe maybe the US is a better ally than China on the continent of, the presence that China has been having on the continent for some time now. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this Trump administration continues to maneuver its relations with the continent of Africa. And yeah, with South Africa, Jonas there, as you heard from Professor Isike, probably on the plans of Cyril Ramaphosa to ultimately be the ambassador of South Africa to the United States after that well documented, advertised, and publicized persona non grata story of former Ambassador Ibrahim Rasool. So yeah, interesting times ahead. Each and every day, there's something new coming out of the United States. There's a new story. There's new change of order that I think at this point has all of our heads spinning. And yeah, interesting times to live in. And if there's one thing we need to remember, and I was speaking to one of the political analysts yesterday, and they said, this is just one term. Okay? People need to remember that, Trump won't be president of the United States for a long time. So we all need to keep calm heads. His executive orders can always be reversed by whoever that might succeed him. But if there's one thing that's certain is South Africa in particular, we are up for some tough times ahead. And it's time for our leadership to kind of step up. To show us that they can navigate us through these choppy waters. Things have been rosy for a long time, particularly, for them, the affluent politicians, the business people. But it looks like it's going to be bad for a long time for all of us South Africans. And this is the time to show that South African spirit that we always preach about, resilient, always able to, take yourself out of difficult situations. We hope this is going to be the case where the true South African spirit is going to shine, because it's going to be hard. The tariffs, there's talks of sanctions, there's all kinds of stories that are being purported about South Africa, and we can all agree at this point that it's because of the ICJ case. There's nothing more, there's nothing less. What we did is we took Israel, put in front of the world court, and said, you are guilty of a genocide, and the United States of America is an accomplice. That's why we're being treated the way that we are. That's why we are being punished by America. And it's time to stand tall, to show that we are indeed, the leaders on the African continent, and we can maneuver our way out of this. It's going to be a rough 4 years that Trump is going to be the president of the United States of America. We have to navigate it carefully, and make sure that we don't lose our country because the United States of America has another leader. He'll come and go, but South Africa will always remain. We're going to take a quick break. News and Views continues after this.